I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. So, today we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on phrases and clauses. So, we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on phrases and clauses. So, during the course of this lesson, we're going to figure out what is a phrase and what is a clause. And before we start with our lesson, you're going to log into aplusstudents.ca with your username as well as your password. And then you're going to select the subject of language arts, grade 8. All right, so once you've selected grade 8, you're going to select the subject of language arts. Oh, we said grade 8 already. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of phrases and clauses. All right, so our chapter is phrases and clauses. Our subject is English language arts, grade 8. And the lesson that we are focusing on is it a phrase or a clause? So is it a phrase or is it a clause? And we are doing our tutorial lesson on aplusstudents.ca. So if you want to go over, let's say, the subject, the work, over here we have the subject, the chapter, grade, as well as the lessons that we are focusing on today. And the lessons under the chapter phrases and clauses is it a phrase or a clause? And we are going to find that out now. Is it a phrase or is it a clause? So a clause, right? It's a group of words that contain both subject and a predicate, right? So it has both a subject and has a verb. And a clause can function as a complete sentence, or it could be combined with other clauses to form compound or complex sentences. So, a clause, once again, is a group of words that contains both a subject and it has a verb. And a clause can function as a complete sentence, or it could be combined with other clauses to form compound or complex sentences. And if we look at an example, so Samantha grew up in a bilingual family. So she can speak two languages fluently. So Samantha grew up in a bilingual family, so she can speak two languages fluently. So Samantha grew up in a bilingual family, so she can speak two languages. So the clause has a subject, and the subject is she, right? It's basically the pronoun subject she, and a predicate is can speak two languages fluently. So Samantha grew up in a bilingual family, so she can speak two languages. And then the Hall of Records, which is found behind Mount Rushmore, contains copies of historical United States documents. So the Hall of Records, which is found behind Mount Rushmore, contains copies of historical United States documents. Mm, mm, mm. So basically, this is a clause, right? It can basically stand on its own if it's got a subject, it's got a verb, and then it can basically be as a complete sentence. And then we have a phrase, and a phrase is any group of words that contains or that functions together in a sentence but lacks subject, predicate, or both. An example of a phrase, it says, we washed the dishes in the sink after dinner. And in this case, the phrase does not contain a subject, right? So, like we said, a phrase is any group of words that functions together in a sentence, but it lacks a subject, or it can lack a predicate, or it can lack both subject and predicate. And in this case, it says we wash the dishes in the sink after dinner. And they're saying that that phrase does not contain a subject. It's got a pronoun, but it's not a subject. Another example is the new physician at the hospital has been working long hours. And here the same. There is no predicate again. So basically, these are a phrase. Like we said, phrases, it's either missing a subject or it's missing a predicate, or it can be missing both. And there we have an example of we wash the dishes in the sink after dinner. And there we said that there is no subject. If we look at the next sentence, it said Robert and Emily took detailed notes during the lecture on microbiology. So Robert and Emily They took detailed notes during the lecture on microbiology. And it says here this phrase contains neither a subject nor a predicate. Doesn't make sense. Because Robert and Emily, that is basically the person or thing that we are discussing, right? And took is a predicate. Details notes during the lecture, my microbiology. So that is basically a phrase. We said a phrase is any group of words that function together in a sentence, but it lack a subject, predicate, or it lacks both. So which means that a sentence will either lack a subject, will lack a predicate, or it can lack both. And we said a clause is a group of words that contains both subject and predicate. And a clause can function as a complete sentence or combine with other clauses to form a compound or complex sentence. For example, Samantha grew up in a bilingual family, so she can speak two languages fluently. Right? And we said the clause has a subject, which is she, and the predicate, which is can speak two languages fluently. So this is basically our tutorial lesson, right? Not even a tutorial, that is an example. So now let's go to aplusstudents.ca. aplusstudents.ca. We said our chapter is phrases and clauses. Now we're going to the first lesson, which is it a phrase or a clause? So a clause is a group of words that contains both subject and it contains a predicate. And a clause can function as a complete sentence or a combine with other clauses to form a compound or complex sentence. For example, Samantha grew up in a bilingual family, so she can speak two languages fluently, which means that the subject is she and the predicate is can speak two languages fluently. And then we have the Hall of Fame record. The Hall of Records, which is found behind Mount Rushmore, contains copies of historical United States documents. And in this case, a clause has a subject, which is which, and a predicate is found behind Mount Rushmore. And then we have a phrase. And a phrase is any group of words that function together in a sentence but lacks a subject, a predicate, or both. We washed the dishes in the sink after dinner. And then the new physician at the hospital has been working long hours. And then Robert and Emily took detailed notes during the lecture on microbiology, and the phrase contains neither subject nor a predicate. All right, so that is basically a description of what a clause is. And remember, we said mainly with a clause can stand on its own, right? And it can basically function as a complete sentence. And if you maybe want to combine with other clauses to form compound complex sentences. Mm. So now, if we look at our, oopsie, if we look at our activity, it says either group of words in bold, a phrase or a clause. So is the group of words in bold a phrase or a clause? At the tax firm. So Haley has all the qualifications listed for the accountant position at the tax firm. So we said, is the group of words in bold a phrase or column? And we said Haley has all the qualifications listed for the accounting positions as a tax firm. So now we say Haley has all the qualifications listed for the accounting position. So in this case, this is a phrase. So this is a phrase. Haley, and it says at the tax firm is a phrase, and it does not have a subject and a predicate. So is the group of words in bold a phrase or a clause? Although glaciers occupy only about 10% of the world's or Earth's land surface, they contain about 75% of its water or of its fresh water. So although glaciers occupy only about 10% of Earth's land surface, they contain about 75% of its fresh water. So the National Fire Protection Agency So the National Fire Protection Agency instituted a color coding system for the fire hydrants. It's a color coded system for the fire hydrants that provides firefighters with crucial information about the wave source or the water sources. So the National Firefighter Protection Agency instituted a color coding system for fire hydrants that provides firefighters with crucial information about the water sources. So we now need to say if this word's in bold is a clause or is it a phrase. So if we look at this words in bold, it says the National Firefighter Protection Agency instituted a color coding system for the fire hydrants. I think we can actually stop just there and put a full stop. So which means that this is a clause. Yes. So the National Fire Protection Agency institution a color coding system for fire hydrant is a clause. All right. All right. Let us go to our test where we need to say if a word or a sentence is either a phrase or if it is a clause. So we need to say if this is a phrase or if this is a clause. Is a group of words in bold a phrase or clause? Inspirational leader Mohandas Gandhi, commonly known as Mahatma Gandhi, directed India's fight for independence against the British rule. So if you look at the word in bold, which is inspirational leader Mohandas Gandhi, so if we look at this word inspirational leader Mohandas Gandhi, if it's a clause or a phrase, then we can rather say this is a phrase because this cannot be a clause. Because remember, we said a clause has both subject and it has a predicate. So let's just stick to it being a phrase. So it is a phrase. Humans are classified as omnivores because they generally consume both plants and animals, although some people are vegetarians or vegans. So is a group of words in bold a phrase or a clause? Human are classified as omnivores, right? Omnivores, it's where we eat meat as well as plants. And humans are classified as omnivores because they generally consume both plants and animals, although some people are vegetarians or vegans. So humans are classified as omnivores. Do we say that is a phrase or do we say it's a clause? So if we look at this word, humans are classified as omnivores. When we look at that one, then we can say that it is a phrase, right? Because we said that with a clause, it has a subject and it has a verb. Oh, so it is a clause, so which means that humans is then our subject, classified is the predicate. So is the group of words in bold a phrase or a clause? Haley has all the qualifications listed for the accounting position at the tax firm. So at the tax firm, is that a clause or is that a phrase? So we can say this is a phrase. It's not a clause. At the tax firm, so it is a phrase. And is the word, the group of words in bold, a phrase or a clause? So by refusing to surrender her seats to white passenger, African American activist Rosa Parks inspired a boycott of city buses in Montgomery, Alabama, and helped strengthen the civil rights movement. So basically, by refusing to surrender a seat to white people, white passengers, African American activists Rosa Parks inspired a boycott of city buses in Montgomery, Alabama, and helped strengthen the civil rights movement. So now we need to say African American activist Rosa Parks. We need to say if that is a phrase or if that is a clause. And remember we said a clause has a subject or predicate or at least both. So African American activist Rosa Parks. This is a phrase. Rosa Parks. It's not a clause. And although glaciers occupy only about 10% of Earth's land surfaces, they contain about 75% of its water. So we need to say if this is a phrase or if this is a clause. So although glaciers occupy only about 10% of the Earth's land surface, they contain about 75% of its fresh water. So we need to say if this is a phrase or do you think this is a clause? And remember, we said a clause has either both subject as well as a predicate, or it has a subject only or predicate only. All right, let's say this is they can be the subject, contain can be the verb. Let's try the clause. Yes, and it is a clause. So they is our subject. And the appliance store policy allows returns for 30 days. However, refunds require a receipt. So we now need to say if this sentence over here is a phrase or a clause. So the appliance stores policy allows returns for 30 days. However, refunds require a receipt. So allows returns for 30 days. That is not a complete sentence, right? Because if somebody just says allows return for 30 days, it's not a complete sentence. So we can say this is a phrase. Because remember we said a clause has a subject, has a predicate, and it basically takes the place of a complete sentence. So, following disastrous invasion of Russia, French military leader and Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte was forced to abdicate and went into exile on the island of Elba. So we now need to say, on the island of Elba, is that a phrase or is it a clause? On the island of Elba. So we can say, on the phrase of Elba is a phrase. So on the island, sorry, of Elba is a phrase. On the island of Elba. The U.S. Marshals Service. The U.S. Marshals Service is a federal law enforcement agency that handles numerous responsibilities, including the apprehension and transportation of federal fugitives. So the U.S. Marshals Service is a federal law enforcement agency that handles numerous responsibilities, including the apprehension and transportation of federal fugitives. So now we need to say if the U.S. Marshal Service is a federal law enforcement agency, if that is a phrase or a clause. So if we look at this word, oh, the U.S. Marshals Service is a federal law enforcement agency, can say this is a clause. It's a clause because it can stand on its own as a sentence. And Mickey's suitcase was too large to fit in the overhead bin. So unfortunately, she had to check it. So Mickey's suitcase was too large to fit in the overhead bin. So unfortunately, she had to check it. So this, the words in bold, is it a phrase or a clause? Mickey's suitcase was too large to fit in the overhead bin. So unfortunately, she had to check it. I think we can say this is a clause. All right. And then cockroaches breathe through holes in their bodies, called spiracles. So, did you know that cockroaches breathe through holes in their bodies called through spiracles? This fact helps explain how they can survive for weeks without a head. Hmm. So, we don't need to say if the group of words in bold or is a phrase, or a clause. So, we need to say if this group of words is a phrase or a clause. Cockroaches can breathe through holes in their bodies called spiracles. And this helps explain how they can survive for weeks without a head. Mm. So now we need to say if this is a phrase or a clause. So cockroaches breathe through holes in their bodies called spiracles. You can say this is a clause. All right. And in the National Fire Protection Agency instituted a color coding system for fire hydrants that provides firefighters with crucial information about the water sources. So the words in bold, which is the National Fire Protection Agency, instituted a color coding system for fire hydrants. We need to say if that is a phrase or we need to say if that is a clause. So the National Fire Protection Agency instituted a color coding system for fire hydrants. This is a clause. All right. And then the most successful advertising slogans are those that have the ability to endure, such as just do it, or when you care enough to send the very best. So the most successful advertising slogans are those that have the ability to endure, such as just do it, or when you care enough to send the very, very best. So the most successful advertising slogans can say it's a phrase. All right. And then you have unique fingerprints. And this holds true this holds true even for identical twins. So humans have unique fingerprints. And this holds true even for identical twins. So we can say humans have unique fingerprints. And this holds true even for identical twins. Let's say it is a clause. Because humans have identical fingerprints. Finish. And then bats, among bats, there are species that can reach speeds of more than 50 miles per hour. So we can then say amongst bats, there are species that can reach speeds of more than 50 miles per hour, and that is a phrase. More than 50 miles per hour is a phrase. And then we need to say if the group of words in bold is a phrase or a clause. Bonobos. Is it bonobos? Chimpanzees, gorillas, and Orangutans. Orangutans? Hmm. Bonobos, chimpanzees, and gorillas. The four species of apes differ from monkeys in their size, gait, brain development, and absence of tail. So the four species of apes. Phrase. Sorry. And that is a phrase. And then crayfish are often associated with water. So crayfish is often associated with water. But the prairie crayfish can be found in pastures where they live in underground burrows. So crayfish are often associated with water. But the prairie crayfish can be found in pastures even where they live underground burrows, in underground burrows. So crayfish are often associated with water. Let's say that's a clause. Or yes. All right, let's do the last one. Is the group of words in bold a phrase or clause? The elevated flower beds that display Ethan's prize roses are quite striking. So the elevated flower beds that display Ethan's prize roses are quite striking. So we can say this is a phrase. All right. So we then said that a phrase, right? We have a phrase and we have a clause. And a clause has a subject and a clause has a predicate, right? So it basically takes up the space of, let's say, it acts as a full sentence. Not acts, but it's basically as a full sentence because it has a subject and it has a predicate, right? So a sentence with a subject and predicate, it basically is classified as a full sentence, right? Or complete sentence, if that is the word, a complete sentence. And with a phrase, right? A phrase is not a complete sentence. It is basically just a group of words. It's almost like it's a dependent clause. It's dependent on the clause in order for it to complete, let's say, either a sentence or its function within a sentence. And it either misses or it's missing a subject or a verb, predicate, or both. All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on phrases and clauses. Till next time, have a good day further. Goodbye.